Hey everyone, welcome back to Painted. This is Maury Curtis Dunbar at Painted Studio here in the Chicago area. This is my third live today, so who knows what's going to happen. All right, sorry, I put on Do Not Disturb, I put it on airplane mode, and I somehow still get messages. I don't know what to do. Anyway, because I guess I'm just popular on messages today. So, you saw me start the lid for this earlier today, and I did a time-lapse video in between now and when you saw me finishing it, so that we could do a whole bunch of crystals. Now, I did discuss earlier my issues with E6000. If you look at this top, those crystals, unlike this one, these crystals aren't crystal clear. It's the E6000 playing with the backing for an inexpensive crystal. Now, I don't mind it, but if I wanted it to look more like this, I need a different glue. So I think the Aleene's Gem Tack that I have, and we'll play with it on another thing another day, and I will test it. But to the best of my memory, because I used to use that years ago, it's better. It just takes longer to dry. It's better for not having the crystals craze. Otherwise, the E6000 is just fine. Now, I did this one on Friday. So the glue has had a long cure time, which is what I recommend. You want all those, any of the adhesive fumes to disperse. You want any moisture to evaporate. These I did, in the last hour. So we're going to be testing a bunch of things today, and one of them is how the epoxy reacts with the glue. Next one is how the epoxy reacts with the different crystals. I've worked with epoxy before, and they have dissolved some of the crystals. I've worked with epoxy before, and it's been no problem. It depends on the epoxy, it depends on the crystals. We carry 2 epoxies, so we're going to test them both. All right, so we're going to test first our liquid glass. Now this dries a little more rigid than the other epoxy that we're going to try, and it has more odor, although it's not heavily odored at all, but it smells more like the 2-part countertop epoxies. Now, that's what I used on this before, is a different 2-part countertop epoxy, and it dissolved the crystals. So I'm prepared for that to happen. We're going to try it simply. I took the base of this one and put crystals on it so that if they melted a little bit, it would just be part of the base to this. I'm not going to do it on the top. We're going to try it on the epoxy that I think might melt those crystals, and then we're going to try the other ones, which I'm pretty sure won't, but I've been wrong before. Hey Maddie, nice to see you here. Okay, so let's flip this down. And again, we ask you to use your sprinkle button, because the more sprinkles, the more abilities I have to do contests. And we're going to do big contest stuff at the end of this month. We've got stuff coming up. All right, so this is liquid glass. It comes with a hardener and a resin, or it says polymer coating on the back, but it's basically one side's the hardener, one side's the resin. And you're going to mix equal amounts. They must be equal, so if you're not good at eyeballing, measure, measure, measure. Now, I have seen some people measuring out their cups and pouring it, and it works for them. My concern is that the density isn't the same as of the liquids, so you might not get what's a true even pour. All right, so I'm pouring these now. I'm coming down to watch myself, make sure that they are equal and level. Might need a little more in here. Let me put this over here. Okay, here's the deal. If you don't, you need to make sure that you've got them even. Why? And I say this every single video, but I'm going to repeat it every video. If you have too much hardener and not enough resin, the hardener will make your resin harden up faster, and it'll become brittle and you won't have much work time with it. If you have too much resin and not enough hardener, the stuff will never harden. You might have soft pockets, you might have a completely uncured situation happening. Now, in the liquid glass, the polymer coating is a little thicker than the hardener, so you always pour the thicker into the thinner liquid. It mixes better. And I'm going to make sure I scrape the daylights out of this cup so that when I mix, I got it all covered. Now, this could be, when I do this with these little containers and wine cup, this could be fabulous. It could be a disaster. All right, so this says mix it up for 2 minutes, and really, you're going to aggressively mix. And scraping the sides constantly. Sort of like when you're baking, you have to go into the bowl. When you've got a mixer going, you have to go in and scrape the sides down. You really have to make sure you've got it all mixed in. The instructions say 2 minutes. And you really, you either put a timer on yourself or talk for a long time, sing a song. Be very, very aggressive. And I'm sorry, the camera's shaking right now because I got my arm rested on the table. It's the end of the day and I get a little tired. So if I rest my hand, the table shakes and then the camera shakes. All right, so I am stirring, scraping the bottom. Now it looks like it's turned white. That's not white, that's just bubbles. I don't care about the bubbles. Why don't I care about the bubbles? Because when we torch this, the bubbles will come out. So this is our mixture for the liquid glass art resin. I'm sorry, a liquid glass Aristocrat. God, I can't even talk right now. Aristocrat liquid glass. Now this will dry harder. This is food safe once it's cured. Epoxies cure in 72 hours. Now for the other one, we're going to use art resin. I just happen to have bigger bottles. It doesn't mean anything. And so I'm going to use the lines on these plastic cups to help me pour. And we got a little bit more to pour for today, this, because I think this, my bet is that this is going to be a little gentler. This is 0 VOC. No odor at all compared to the other one. And then we're going to mix them both up. We're going to pour them, and some things may happen right away. Some reactions might take a little longer. All right, I'm pouring equal amounts, and because these cups have their little lines on them, I can pour evenly with just with ease. All right, we just need to drop more. There we go. And clean up your jugs and stuff. Make sure you get the correct lid and plug, if your container has a plug in it, on the correct bottle, because otherwise you'll have a chemical reaction. They will permanently bond to the bottle opening and you won't be very happy. Now this product doesn't really have a thinner and a thicker one. They're both about the same, so it doesn't matter which one I poured into the other. Okay, now I'm putting my cups and we're gonna mix the daylights out of this one. Now this one doesn't say mix 2 minutes, but you have to mix. However long you mix, the other one is how long you mix this one. I probably got way too much epoxy in here. I did a very generous pour because it's my first time using this kind of cup, and I overestimated how much I needed. Oh well, I'll go dig it after we're done here. I'll go put some pigments in here and I'll dig out some molds and pour them into other things. Now this one, when you've mixed it enough, bubbles start to fly. Sorry about this. When the don't breathe in those bubbles. Those bubbles are pure epoxy. You don't want them in your lungs. And as you can see, this one doesn't turn quite as white as the other one does. So now we've got these two mixed up. I'm gonna mix this one just a little more. It's a lot more product, and I just don't wanna not mix it. Come back in the morning and find I have soft spots on my cups and my containers. Do yourself a favor, always wear gloves with this. This comes off, you have to clean your hands with alcohol to clean this. This says isopropyl. Isopropyl works. I happen to have denatured alcohol in there just because I needed smaller containers. I'm not going to worry about my hands being messy now, but I'm going to swing this over so you can see our cup turner setup here. So, whoops, knocked something over. Didn't mean to do that. You'd be amazed at what I can knock over by simply moving things. All right, so I'm gonna slide over this way. I have my cups all and my little jars all set up on the cup turners, and I have the lids set over here, and I'll show you how I'm gonna handle those after I do the cups. So this is, first thing I'm gonna do is turn the one I'm working on. Now this little one here, I got this at, where did I get this one? Michael's. This is not my favorite cup turner. It doesn't hold things very well, but it works not well enough for small things. And what I was doing is, I use paper towel because it didn't seem to grab these firm enough, but I gotta make sure the paper towel's shut in so when I torch the epoxy, I don't set it on fire. I'm sure they're better materials to use. This is just what I had been using. All right, so I'm going to take my epoxy, and let's see, I want to see if I can angle it a little bit so I got a better grab on it. I'm going to take it and I'm just pouring it a little bit, and then I'm brushing it across the surface. It's gonna be messy. Now, another reason I don't like this cup turner is it didn't hollow out a space under here. So if your epoxy builds up, it builds up right here. And that's really annoying. So this is why you don't see me use this one that much. I'm just not that impressed with it. But it's a good backup. So I am definitely brushing over the crystals. We're going to see how well this takes this. Go back in. I want to make sure. I could have taped off this neck. I didn't do that. I wasn't thinking that well. That doesn't matter though. I have pretty good control over this. I'm not putting a heavy, thick coat on. I'm just moving it around. And then I'm taking my brush, dipping in, and I'm going to coat the bottom. And I just let the brush do the smoothing to make sure all my surface is covered. Now the cool thing with epoxy is it self-levels. So even, if I don't have it perfectly even right this very second, it will level on its own. So a part of what I'm doing is I'm kind of brushing on the crystals to see, because last time I did this with an epoxy that melted the crystals, I don't remember how long it took for that to happen. So I'm hoping that it won't happen with this one. But again, it's a tester. So now I'm going to take this epoxy and I'm going to use the same brush because it won't matter in the long run. Because this one doesn't have crystals, and by the time I get to this, it'll all be dissolved. All right, so I've turned that cup turner on. Let's see if I turn it the other way and it turns towards me. There we go. I'm gonna take some of this, slopping it on. And again, I could have taped off. I'm just trying to be careful about how I apply. And unfortunately, I was kind of a dork and picked a brush that was a little bigger than I wanted. Don't use this on brushes you ever intend to use again. It won't work. This brush, the reason I'm using sponge brushes is they don't scratch the foil, and then once they harden up, they're disposable. And as you can see, I'm just spreading the epoxy around. I know people get a little afraid of epoxy, like they pour it and they shouldn't touch it. That's not really the case. It's just another paint or a sealant product. It has some temperamental qualities, yeah. Okay, so do I personally. But it just takes a little practice to get used to working with it. When I first started using it, I was terrified of stuff. I thought I was gonna make the house blow up or something, and then I realized it's not that hard to use. Okay, so I've started the pour on the third one, and here we go. I'm gonna make big drippy messes. That's part of working with epoxy. It's kind of unavoidable. But you can try to apply your coating thinner, especially if you think you're going to need a second layer of it. Usually the first coat I use is a thinner coat, and then I can come back and decide if I need something else done. That's a blob of glue on there that I want to get off. I didn't even know there was one. I didn't inspect that before I did this. I know the glue is very well cured, so. And again, epoxy takes about 72 hours to a full food-safe cure. It's dry to the touch in anywhere from 8 to 12 hours. It just depends on what the temperature is and how it's curing. So, but it's not food safe for a full 72. So I'm watching this to see what's going on. Now, the other thing I didn't consider is that I had to torch this, and I may have torched too hard over crystals in the past, and that might have melted it. All right, so we're going back down here. And here are our lids. And as you can tell, I made way too much epoxy today. I just want this, again, this is, I test stuff. I need to find ways to make things work the way I want them. So this looked like I poured a lot of product on there, but really it was in the center of the crystals. I want to make sure the crystals are well anchored, but I'm brushing back out of the crystals. I don't want the crystals pooled with this stuff. I just want it coated lightly so it's a little more durable. All right, we're gonna do these. Start sitting here going, what else do I need to pour epoxy on? Because I got a lot of epoxy I made by mistake. Again, overestimated how much I needed. Let's get that in there. Again, the edges of these are taped off, and worst, there is a slight seam here. So worst comes to worst, if I can't easily peel the tape off when I'm done, I just run an X-Acto blade over it, and that cuts through the epoxy and it cuts through the tape, and it's ready to pull, and it will pull it without messing the finish. Okay, so I have done those two. Now, I'm gonna pull off one glove, not both, because sometimes I have to stick my fingers back in the epoxy. but this keeps me from crudding that up. Hey Manetta, hey Susan, nice to see you both here. Thanks Manetta. All right, so I'm gonna push this back just so you can see. I didn't intend to get it that close to the camera. All right, let's hope I don't melt the crystals. I've got this, you can get this little, this is like a food torch. You can get them at Home Depot, or you can get them at your favorite gourmet store. Just refill it with a butane. And I'm quickly going over this because I don't want to accidentally melt the crystals. Because these ones I know are plastic. I'm not sure whether I'm dealing with glass or plastic on the blue ones or not. So I'm not going to find out the hard way by melting it. All right, so we're going to come back over here. All right, this is another reason I don't like this one. Things tend to tip on this. This makes me nuts. I'm torching. I'm not putting the heat on the crystals because I don't want to melt them. But I gotta go and torch all of this, otherwise it won't level and dry clear. It'll dry all bubbly. All right. We shall see. I know Swarovski crystals would hold up because they are made with glass and not plastic, although sometimes they have coatings on them that might not take the torching. So each time I do something with a new crystal, I like to test it. I'm gonna have to fix this. There. Bug the crap out of me. Now, you know, I fixed it, so now I got to go back in and quickly torch where I just stuck my fingers. All right, here's this one going. And I'm torching, as you can see. I don't know if you can see what I'm doing, if this is up high enough. All right. There we go. I'm torching the area that has the foil on it because it's a little less temperature sensitive than the crystals might be. And then I'm going in and I'm moving a little faster on the crystals. And again, I'm not shooting the flame into the crystals. I am moving it over it so that it liquefies the epoxy and raises any bubbles. Let's do this. All right, we're going to do the ones down here. All right, so let me take a look at this for a second. I can see these are wanting to dissolve into the epoxy a little bit. These are holding up much better. These won't go away. They're just going to kind of flatten out, round down a little bit. So that's the difference too between using the cheapest crystals and then actually putting some money into the crystals. How things hold up is a big deal. Now, if you look in the center of each, there's a little divot. So the epoxy is going to pool in the center in each. And already where it's, let me find something to poke at it with. All right, here's this pen. Here, these are flattening out just a little bit. Here, they aren't. All right, now that I stuck the pen in there, I just want to torch it just a little bit again to make sure I didn't create any bubbles. This is going to, again, this thing wants to keep tilting. This makes me nuts. That's one of the reasons I don't like this turner, because it doesn't like to fit things properly. And I'm going to spend the rest of the evening poking at that with my finger to make sure it's straight so it's drying and so we don't end up with a strange buildup of epoxy on one spot. because once this thickens, and I've had this happen by a cup turner that didn't keep things straight, we got a heavy buildup of epoxy on one spot on the bottom, and the cup didn't actually sit level. And that was just to smooth out the spot where I stuck my finger. All right, let's take the glove off. And if you don't think gloves make your hands sweat, you're wrong. But better sweaty hands than epoxied hands. All right, let me get this up. Sorry. And I'm making faces. It's because I don't want to, I just touched some a little epoxy with my fingers, and I'm trying not to touch anything else. Wipe my hands off. That's what I do all day, every day. Clean up after myself, because I make the biggest messes on the face of the earth. All right, I'm going to keep adjusting that cup, but I'm going to use the bottom of a pen instead of my fingers for a change. And if I have to, I'll go in and torch the epoxy a few more times. Now, the epoxy has approximately 45 minutes pot time. That means once you've mixed it, you have about 45 minutes of usable work time. If you put your, now let me show you something, and I'm going to have to clean my hands again. In a tall, narrow container like this, the epoxy will start to set up sooner. If you want to keep your epoxy liquid longer, you actually need to keep it in a larger, more open container with more area space exposed. In small containers, the epoxy starts to heat up. And if I had a bigger container, if like I filled this whole cup and I've done it, I could watch this melt. And this actually feels a little warm to the touch, which of course I shouldn't have grabbed with my bare hands, because I'm a genius. I take the gloves off and then I stick my hands in epoxy. The joys of being me. Now, all of these are going to come out and look really cool, but they're going to be different simply because the gems that I'm using are different. This is also a test to see if I'm getting any weird reactions with the epoxy and the adhesive. Now, so far, nothing. And my biggest concern was when I flamed these, when I used the torch, that the adhesive might actually not react well to the heat. I'm not going to show you, but I had a fire extinguisher close by just in case. That would have made a heck of a live. All right, everybody, have a great day. It is after 5. I know you all, at least if you're in my time zone, I know you're all getting ready to go home if you're at work, or you're getting ready to do dinner and stuff with family if you're home already. And if you're in California, well, you still have another couple hours to work, so I'm sorry. Anyway, have a great day, everyone. Sprinkle, sprinkle, sprinkle. Your sprinkles help us to do contests, and we have a big one coming up at the end of the month. So, sprinkle, sprinkle, sprinkle. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day. It was wonderful seeing you here. Do not be afraid to ask a question. If you didn't answer anything clearly in this video, put it in the comments. I will come back. I answer all the questions. And even if you had posted a question while I was working, I answered it verbally, I still type it out so you have a reference point. All right, everybody, one more time. I'm like trying to say goodbye, and I keep coming up with more things. So now I'm done. I'll have a good one. You have a good one. I'll have a better one. Talk to you later.